Good morning, everyone. I hope you are still surviving. That's the last presentation of the morning. So indeed, my name is Michel. I will just say my first name. So I work for Stanley Stella. So indeed, we are a fashion brand, so B2B actually. And I will just directly go to the first slide. So we are leader in Europe, providing what we call blank apparels to decorators, communication agencies who need to print or put embroidery, transform the t-shirts, sweatshirts, polos, and sell to their own customers. So I guess you all have in your cupboards a number of t-shirts with the name of your company or with music festivals or sport events or whatever. We all have that in the cupboard. So actually that's where we are working in. So we are providing the blank products and we provide that to our customers who are transforming them. We are a small company, so it's going to be a little bit different than some of the presentation for big companies. So we are a young company as well. So it has been started only 12 years ago. But the good thing about the company is that sustainability was from the beginning at the core of the company. So in fact, we don't do sustainability in Stanley Stella due to compliance or due to customer pressure. Of course, we listen to customers. Of course, we look at CSRD and all the different directives coming up and all that. But from the beginning, sustainability was really part of the key pillars of the company. And not only sustainability, another pillar also, which is very important in the way we have developed products, is quality. And I say it because, in fact, in some presentations also, or some workshops and roundtables, some people said, okay, but the customers are not always ready to pay for sustainability. So, in fact, I think some customers are ready to pay for sustainability, some others not. But if you add quality with sustainability, definitely you have a good value proposition and you have more willingness to pay from the customers. And that's, I think, what has made what has been part of the success of Stanley Stella up till now, is that actually we have grown up very quickly. So we are market leader in Europe. We are going to start in US very soon. Why? Because we are recognized as a brand providing quality products with also sustainability together with it. So you see that in the key pillars, sustainability is one of the four key pillars of the company. Aside of that, we have done also a charter. I'm not going to go into details for the charter. There is, of course, there are some elements linked to the environment, some other links to the social part, but also a number of elements linked to the way we work, meaning we always forget in sustainability the G. So accountability, transparency, all these elements are very important as well. And we try to bring this charter to all the stakeholders which are working together with us. So upstream with the suppliers, but also downstream with the customers. So our competitors, basically in B2B, they sell to everybody. What we are doing here in Europe, and that's what we are going to do in US as well, is we have a dedicated network of dealers. So, and we select the dealers based also on a number of elements and pillars that we think are important. Of course, there are all the elements which are linked to the business, purely in the business, and elements which are linked also to the quality, the way to approach business, but also the sustainability is part of that. So, and that is also reflected in the charter that we bring to the stakeholders around us. So we are a bit more than 220 employees, so it's growing up every day, so I don't exactly know how many we are now. The important thing is that, okay, we are based in Brussels, the headquarters is over there, the company has been, the founder is from Belgium, but we have also many people in the countries where we are producing or sourcing the raw material. So we have 35 to 40 people in Bangladesh because we are sourcing mostly the knitwear from Bangladesh. We have people in China for the outerwear. And then we have also, because we are going high in the supply chain, and so we have people in Turkey and in India close to the cotton field in order to make sure that we can really see where the cotton is coming from and with who are the stakeholders along the supply chain. So that's very important to have these people on site, because if you want to make an impact, if you want to make things happen, you need to have the people really with the hands in the business and together and linked to the stakeholders along the supply chain. So when I say that sustainability is a commitment since the beginning, so it started from the material. You can see 100% of the fiber used are sustainable fibers. Actually, I don't like to use sustainable. You know, in the future we will have to find some other terms, but we say preferred materials. So basically, mostly the knitwear is done with organic cotton. So only organic. You have to know that in the world, the organic cotton represents only 1% of the total cotton production. So it's not always easy to find. So at least to find the right partners, you have a lot of certifications, but you have to go beyond certification to try to find the real cotton, you know, and the good partners. But basically that is the starting point, is the organic cotton. And then when we started with outerwear just a few years ago, we did it with recycled polyester. So that's only recycled polyester. So important thing, you see, we are not a big company growing up, but we also don't have that many tier one suppliers. So it's still limited. It's also growing up. Now we have, you can see 12 tier one suppliers. We have about 10 to onboard in the future. So because the business is growing, so definitely we need more suppliers. But it's also very important. One of the, let's say, policy or the approach that we have had for sourcing is to limit the number of suppliers. Why? Because if you want to be involved with your suppliers or somewhere in control, if you can call it like that, it's easier to make it with a smaller number of suppliers than with big numbers of suppliers. So if sometimes I talk to some of the brands in some other conference with H&M or Bestseller, whoever, they have hundreds of tier one suppliers. They don't even know what's happening over there, you know. And we have a small number of suppliers. We have people sitting in each supplier. So we have our QA managers. They have their desk over there in each supplier. These QA managers are also responsible to look at sustainability aspects in the factory. So that's really important. I think the starting point of being in control of what's happening in the factories is to be really close to them and basically in the factories. We have also, you see the number of tier 2 suppliers. We have also chosen to have some what we call composite factories. So tier 1 and tier 2 are integrated together. It's also easier. So you make a commitment already one step further in the supply chain as well. And then year after year, now we come to tier 3, so the spinners doing the yarn. And then we go even now to the ginners. So the ginners are the one who are cleaning the cotton, if you can call it like that. And then now last year we started our direct to farm project in Tanzania, where we have a partnership with an organization, and we are actually sourcing the cotton directly from the farmers. And actually that's the last step in the supply chain. I mean, not yet the last step, because the last step is actually to talk to the seed manufacturers and to make sure that the seeds are okay. But okay, you know. But just to tell you that having this mapping of the supply chain, knowing the different stakeholders on each level of the supply chain is actually making our job possible in terms of sustainability. That's really the key element. So today I've been requested to talk mostly about climate, so I'm not going to go into details of the other key pillars, but I already mentioned that materials is very important for us, and that's really the basics of our sustainability approach. The social aspects are, of course, very important. You know that we are producing in Bangladesh, so it's not easy. So we have to find, let's say, an approach, like I said, to make sure that the working conditions are correct. I always say you don't go to Bangladesh for sustainability. Mostly you go for price and the skills of the people, because you have thousands of people working well and you have a very good quality of products. But you can work in Bangladesh and finding the right suppliers in order to make sure that you have an aligned agenda with the suppliers in terms of sustainability, working conditions, fair remuneration, and so and so. The other element of social aspect is also giving back to the community. So We have give back program on the social and environmental aspect. So environmental is what we call offset, but basically we try not to call it offset. We just give back on some project. But on the social aspect, we have also some project like we finance some mobile hospitals in Bangladesh for the villages of the workers around the factories. We will also finance waterways for access to drinking waters, these kind of things. And we do that in close to the manufacturing. We have also project close to the cotton field, and we have also project close to the headquarters in Belgium for now, but also in the future in different locations in Europe. So today I'm going to talk about climate. Why? Because this year we released our decarbonization strategy and carbon footprint objective for 2030. It has been one step ahead for us as a company. So in B2B, in our, let's say, with all competitors, nobody really is there yet. And we have tried to make an approach which is really looking at impact. Once again, it's really a commitment from our side. We don't do it just because there are some pressure coming up and all this, but we think that we have a duty to do that. And we are looking really at practically what we can do and how we will do it, you know. And I'm going to explain to you our approach for that. It went into 3 steps. The first one is really understanding. The second is about building up the strategy. And the third one is about how to start up the implementation. If we talk about the understanding, it's actually, like I said, really looking for knowing our carbon emission along the whole supply chain. So when I say the whole supply chain is from cotton field to the end of life. So everything. So we try to map everything and to try to understand where the emissions are. We started 2 years ago, so it's long work. Actually, I started in the company 2.5 years ago, and I started with this, with external company. And what we found out very quickly is that actually what they are looking at is really a standard model, and a lot of this is secondary data. And then, in fact, all the work that we have done during the last 2 years is really to hunt for primary data. And because, okay, not only we want accurate data, but we want also something that is, let's say, a good basis for action. If you don't have primary data, how can you go into actions with your suppliers? It's very difficult. So, that's what we have done. So Martin, who is here, has done that quite a lot with the different suppliers. It means a lot of interaction. It means also our team on site in Bangladesh and all this was also always challenging the data. We have made validation trip. So basically 2 weeks in Bangladesh, supplier by supplier, challenging 1 day with each, because it's huge factories. You never know exactly what is related to your production. They don't have meters everywhere and all that. So we try to really find out the real practical information. So it's not perfect. But I think now that we have good enough data to make sure that we can evaluate the different suppliers, see where the emissions are, and take the proper actions. So that's what we have done. Is we have, of course, looked at where the hotspots are, and then based on that, we can go further. So that's the result. So the number, it doesn't matter too much at the end. So that's the emissions. So, but if you take into consideration, that's about 0.5% of what H&M has as carbon emission. It represents about 80,000 return flights from Brussels to New York. So just to give it some kind of concrete elements linked to that. The most important is to see where the emissions are in the supply chain or in the value chain. And sorry, I pushed on the wrong one. And then here, what I said is about primary data. For us, we could spot basically the emissions of with primary data on about 61% of the total emissions. And that's very important because that's where we will act. So the secondary data are also important somewhere because we see, for example, if we want to involve our customers, we need to make them realize that they have also an impact. But our primary focus will be over there at the production. And you can see that in the fabric, that's where the highest level of emission happen. Why? Because you have the dyeing, the washing, and all these elements in production. So then when we have the data and we have the information about the emissions, we have to build up a strategy. So we first prioritized based on the different tiers and based on where the emissions are. We looked at the different pillars which could help us to decarbonize and each opportunity in each pillar. And then, of course, it is very important is to have internal alignment. So I forgot to say at the beginning that we are, actually, I'm a very lucky person because we are a bit more than 220 people in the company, but in the sustainability team, we are 11 already. And so that's about 5%. I don't think many people have that luxury like we have, but that's also important. But also the second aspect of that is that all the 220 people must be involved also in sustainability. So thanks to that, we can be involved in all the different departments. So, and actually, I'm still asking for more people because there's more to do, But so priority as a first element, look at the impacts versus the efforts. I think that we all do that, so that's common sense. So just looking at where we can act first and setting up the priorities based on where the emissions are happening, and also how we can put, let's say, prioritize our efforts on the different tiers. You can see that we have divided on three levels. The first one is really the priority scope. The second one is opportunity. So of course, if we see something which can be done, we will do it, and we will ask our colleagues to implement that as well. And then we have some other areas like, of course, the usage at the end of the t-shirts, like the ironing and all this. It's very difficult to have an impact on that, so it's more out of scope for now. So the pillars. Where can we decarbonize? But the first element is very easy for us, is the macroeconomics. So I think there is an evolution in terms of the emissions, mostly country by country. So it's also important to have some knowledge about it, so to understand what are the different type of energies in the different countries. So for example, in Bangladesh, all or most of the electricity is produced by natural gas, so it's a high level of impact. It's very difficult to find green electricity except the solar panels. So if you go to India, depending on the regions and all this, it's already different. So, and you see the evolution also. But Bangladesh started up their first nuclear plant this year. So that's the first step. And then there will be some other projects also. So it's also very important for us to understand where each country is going to, because it will influence also the result of the decarbonization as a first step. The second element is the sourcing. I just mentioned the difference between the different countries. So if you source from one country or another, the impact is not always the same. And that's valid for the manufacturing of the garment, for the fabric manufacturing as well. But you can see also the yarn, which is representing, I think, 15%, if I remember well. You can spin the cotton close to the cotton field or close to the fabric manufacturing. So if we do it close to the cotton field, it's more in Turkey or in India, where the emissions are less. And if we do it close to the fabric, so it's more in Bangladesh, where the emissions are higher. Of course, we like, and our colleagues from operation, they like to source it close to the fabric because you have more flexibility with the stock and all that. But what we say is, all right, guys, if you have 30% spent in Bangladesh, that's maybe enough. And then you can spin the rest over there in Turkey and India. So you lower actually your emissions, So this kind of allocation of sourcing is very important because it has an impact. And then when you look at sourcing, you look also in the country itself. So as I said, we have no primary data, so we can benchmark the different suppliers, and we can, on one side, challenge the suppliers, but also we can take into consideration the intensity of the carbon emissions of the different suppliers in order to allocate business. That's not going to be the only criteria, but that can be one of the criteria for the allocation of the business. The third element is, of course, going deep with the suppliers and make action plans with them to make their production less energetic, to reduce the emissions, and to have also for them an objective towards 2030 or later and all that. Most of the suppliers, because we are not the only client of the suppliers, they have already the pressure from some of the brands and all this. So in fact, we try also to combine. So like somebody else said in another presentation, sometimes competitors don't work together, but we still try to see what exists already. And we'll try also to reach with other brands to see how we can have a common pressure, let's say, on the suppliers. At the end, from them, in countries like Bangladesh, sustainability is more about compliance, legal aspects and all this. But in this case, I think also there is a lot of education to be done to explain to them that it's a matter of survival for them. If they want to make business in the future, I was talking on the second pillar about sourcing allocation. If they want to make business in the future, they need to be good in terms of carbon emission. Okay? And then there are some other opportunities and some risks. So for example, if we grow up the outerwear in percentage in the total range that we have, so the impact is higher because the outerwear is with recycled polyester, where the emissions and the intensity is higher than for the organic cotton. On the opposite side, we have also a range of recycled cotton where we collect the waste from the fabric and then we recycle the cotton. So we have some products made with recycled cotton. If we take this one and we increase the business in comparison to the total, in fact, it will have a benefit on the total carbon emissions. So these are the opportunities. It's also very important to feed this kind of element into the strategy of the company so that we can also take it into consideration for our achievement for the future. So the opportunities, I'm not going to go into detail. I have already a bit explained about this for macroeconomic sourcing and suppliers. But then the next step, which is very important, is to have full alignment. As I said, we have a large team in sustainability, but this kind of strategy and objective needs to be the ownership of everybody. So we have identified the opportunities. We then align with each department, and the very important thing is to have an approval from the whole management in order to take the ownership for everybody. So it's a common objective. It's not an objective from sustainability department. Very important. That's our target, minus 30% in terms of relative emissions. Then it's not so important about the number itself, but I think I'd just like to explain why we go to such target and not necessarily to SBTI. So if we would have gone to SBTI, it would have been non-achievable because we are growing with double digit, and so basically we would have to commit to something we know would not be achievable. So what basically we are looking at is, like we said, create an impact and start up the first steps. So we calculated what we can do, and we think that minus 30% is definitely achievable. It's something that we have to achieve in 6 years only. And I think we will go at the end on a higher level. So we'll probably achieve much more than that, you know. But the most important, like I said, is to give the ownership to everybody, to make a realistic target that everybody believes in it. And then we see also after 1 or 2 years that moving towards achieving that target. So, you know, well, I think that some studies like BCG just analyzed that I think it's about 14% of the companies reported that they are on the level of their ambition in terms of targets. So most of the companies, they announce SBTI targets and all this, and at the end they say, oh, we cannot achieve it. So basically we do the opposite. We start with a slow motion, let's say, do the first step, and then after we see if we can do more, we will then commit to more. So this is the intensity on the different pillars, so the reduction that we try to achieve. And then the other element in terms of launching this target is to make it known by everybody. I mentioned about the internal alignment, but so we did also an internal launch event. So that was the first time in Stanley Stella that there was an event with all employees, so all people came in together, which was not purely business related. So we had an event just on the release of the carbon footprint. And I think it has been very much appreciated by the people, because then the idea of this event was to transfer the ownership of this objective and the decarbonization to everybody. And everybody after that event felt involved and excited about, okay, we are going to do it. And that's very important because without them, it's impossible to do, you know. We also explained that to all the stakeholders that we have around, so the banks, the recruitment agencies, because of course it's important to get new employees, having also that in mind, or other type of stakeholders. We have partnership for decorators, for example, and we are going to roll out also some sessions with all our dealers, all our customers in Europe, where we are going to explain what we want to do and try to make sure that also they do their part of the job in the decoration and that it's coming into their mind as well. So this is about the internal event. It was very nice actually, and also brought by the CEO, the founder of the company, as really something which is important. And I think that was really really nice things to do in order to make sure everybody is involved. Now the implementation. We talked about the internal ownership to bring the ownership to everybody, and then it goes on also with the way of working for the implementation. What we have done is we've started up, or we have defined 12 working groups. They did not all start yet, but a number of them started, in order to give, let's say, the leadership and the ownership of the decarbonization to the different employees. So we take different employees from different divisions, different departments, and they lead a working group. There is one about office, there is one about dyeing, there is one about tier 1 suppliers, there is another one about outerwear. So different working groups. We have also, we include sometimes when necessary external stakeholders in the working group, and then the working groups bring action recommendation so to a committee. So a committee which is with the CEO, myself, somebody from the board, and we analyze the actions, and then whenever there is some necessary investment, for example, to agree to put the action into practice or not. So, and that's the way we want to work, and to also stimulate everybody to bring initiative in order to find solution for each of the different pillars. We work, of course, you look at the quick wins, you look at the 80-20, obviously as well. Customer must do sometimes, of course, office, everybody is looking that you have scope 1 and scope 2 very low. So for us, it represents less than 1%, but it's still important. Transportation is also something that customers are looking into, even if it represents only 5% on the total supply chain. So in fact, for the inbound, outbound for us, it's less than 3%. So it's still very small, but we need to have a look to that also, and that's something which is required by the customers. Also, and we are coming to the end, the involvement of the factories is, of course, very important. So in Bangladesh, mostly these factories producing garments are huge. They have different clients. Most of the clients are bigger companies than us. So like I was mentioning, H&M, Marks & Spencer, or IKEA, whoever. And it is very important that if we want to do that, it is really brought from the top management of the factory. So we have individual CEO meeting and management meeting with each of the tier 1 suppliers, where we explain where we want to go, and we want to have their commitment before we start any kind of action. And basically the reaction from the factories and from the factory owners has been always been positive. And then that helps, of course, after to go into implementation. And the second thing that we are doing with each of the tier 1 suppliers is that we have on-site assessment. So we have taken external consultants, engineers, who are going into the whole production facility, and they analyze everything. They look at the energy loss, about the different machineries and all that, and they come with recommendations, practical recommendations, you know. So, and then after, when we have done the on-site assessment, and that's what we are going to go to do soon, we go back over there to the suppliers, and we try to agree on the priorities and where we are going to put our efforts first and then afterwards, in order to also have a decarbonization plan for each of the different suppliers. Voilà, that's a bit the approach that we have. Try to be very practical, pragmatic, in order to really come to a real decarbonization achievement. So if I take the key elements of my presentation, so for us, our approach and what we thought was very important is to start by really understanding all the different elements and really go into primary data. The second element is to, of course, build up the strategy and define the priorities and where to put the focus, where we have the biggest opportunities. Then the third element is, of course, bring this ownership of carbon footprint. But here I'm talking about carbon footprint, but it could be about any kind of ownership for the sustainability as well. When we talk about working conditions, without operations, I cannot actually make sure that the working conditions are good in the factory. So give the ownership to others, make sure that we have a total alignment in the company, and then also involve the stakeholders, and basically mostly here when we go to the supply chain, the suppliers and the top management of the suppliers. These are the key elements of my presentation. We could talk about the details in the next roundtable, I think, because I think that's where we go now. No? Thank you very much.